genocide of Europe's Jews allowed to happen? What made it possible? On a very personal note, I would also like to join in welcoming the survivors and their families who are here today. You honor us by your presence. Your story is the reason the museum exists, and your lives and your active partnership in this institution are the reasons that we are all dedicated, not only to the memory of the Holocaust, but to the real message of surviving, to renewing the commitment to life and our common future. Today, it's also an honor to be joined by world-renowned Holocaust scholar, educator, and author Peter Hayes. Throughout his distinguished career as a professor at Northwestern University, he has shaped the field of Holocaust studies. And of great interest to our community, he serves as the museum's academic committee.
This created an environment in which people were saying desperate times demand desperate measures. And the attitude that had developed over the preceding 60 years, that Jews were somehow different, somehow dangerous to the society, suddenly had a much larger audience than it had ever had before. That was the opportunity that Adolf Hitler exploited. And once Adolf Hitler, who was absolutely dedicated to the notion that Jews were the source of all Germany's problems, once Adolf Hitler acquired power, then the impulse to conformity meant that more and more Germans, whether they had voted for him in the first place or not, behaved as if his ideas were their guiding lights. And this made the Holocaust, in that sense, possible. Why the 20s and 30s? Again, the enormity of the post-war crisis that developed as a result of World War I and the Bolshevik Revolution, and this created an environment of intense fear and anxiety.
Racial science, we had it here in Cleveland at the Maltz Museum, and there was a great quote by a leading Nazi that said, Nazism is simply applied biology. And that's kind of a shorthand for this big, sort of revolutionary idea that he brought. Would you explain that worldview?
Yeah, I mean, Hitler certainly thought that Nazism was applied biology. Hitler thought that all life is a zero-sum game. The contenders in this zero-sum game are peoples. They contend for race, they contend for space in which they can acquire the territory to grow food enough to feed them, or they can acquire wealth that makes them more powerful. The nationality of the people that is going to win in this struggle is the people that is most successful at conquering space and territory for lots of different forms of behavior. There were plenty of Germans who in 1932 were anti-Semites. That doesn't mean that they were killers. They might have had a certain form of prejudice toward Jews. They might have vaguely imbibed from all of this anti-Semitic literature that was available that Jews were somehow different and a problem and so on and so forth. But they didn't vote that way. In 1928, before the Depression struck, the Nazi Party got 2.6% of the German vote in the parliamentary elections. In 1930, they got 18%. In 1932, they got 37%. That's the impact of the Depression. As long as the Nazis were saying to Germans, everything that's wrong in your life is caused by the Jews, that had no resonance until there was this vast national economic crisis. Even so, when Hitler came to power on January 30th, 1933, roughly 55% of the Germans had never voted for him.